I tore open the envelope, my fingers trembling slightly. No return address, just my name and address printed in a neat, unfamiliar font. The cream-colored card slid out, adorned with silver embossing that caught the afternoon light streaming through my kitchen window. A wedding invitation. Mark's wedding invitation. My university friend was finally tying the knot. I smiled, genuinely happy for him, until a small handwritten note fluttered to the floor. I bent down to retrieve it, the paper light between my fingers but suddenly weighing 1,000 pounds once I read the words. She'll be there. Thought you should know. 5 words. 5 simple words that sent my carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. There was only one she this could mean. Olivia. My ex-wife. The woman I hadn't seen in 13 years, not since the day she walked out of our apartment with packed suitcases and words that had carved permanent scars into my soul. I stared at the invitation trying to process what this meant. Olivia would be at the wedding. Mark must have remained friends with her all these years. The thought made my stomach twist with something between betrayal and curiosity. I placed the invitation on the kitchen table and walked to the living room where a framed family photo stood on the mantel. My wife Sophia smiled back at me, her arm around our 12-year-old son Adrian. They had warm, genuine smiles, nothing like the practiced, camera-ready smile Olivia had perfected during our marriage. The sound of the front door opening pulled me from my thoughts. Adrian's backpack hit the floor with a thud as he called out, "Dad? I'm home." He appeared in the doorway, his violin case clutched in one hand. His hair was mussed from the wind, curls falling across his forehead just like mine did at his age. Those eyes, though, observant, intelligent, they reminded me of his mother. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, proving just how perceptive he was. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I almost laughed at how accurate his assessment was. "Your dad might be meeting a ghost from his past soon," I said, deciding honesty was the best approach. I'd never lied to my son and I wasn't about to start now. "What kind of ghost?" He set his violin case down carefully and approached me with interest rather than concern. I picked up the framed photo and sat on the couch, patting the space beside me. Adrian joined me, his lanky preteen frame still small enough to fit comfortably against my side. "Before I met your mom, I was married to someone else," I began, watching his eyes widen slightly with surprise. "Her name was Olivia. We were young, just out of university." "You never told me that," he said, not accusingly, just stating a fact. "It wasn't a secret," I explained. "Just not something I talk about much. It ended badly." "Did you love her?" Adrian asked with the directness only children possess. I nodded slowly. "Very much at first. But sometimes love isn't enough when people want different things." Adrian considered this with a seriousness beyond his years. "And now you're going to see her again?" I showed him the invitation. "My old friend Mark is getting married. Apparently she'll be there. Are you going to go?" He studied my face carefully. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Part of me wants to run as far away as possible." Adrian surprised me then, as he often did. "I think you should go," he said confidently. "You always tell me we shouldn't run from challenges." I smiled ruefully. Having your own advice thrown back at you by your child was a special kind of parental experience. "Besides," he continued, brightening, "I could play something at the wedding. As a gift. I've been working on a new piece." That made me pause. The thought of Adrian, my son, my miracle, playing his violin at an event where Olivia would be present. There was a certain poetry to it. I reached for my phone and dialed Sophia's number. She picked up after 2 rings, the sounds of her classroom barely audible in the background. "Hey love," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Remember Mark from university? He's getting married and I looked at Adrian, who nodded encouragingly. "I think we should all go together." As Sophia asked questions on the other end, I watched my son pick up his violin case and head to his room to practice. A certainty settled over me. Whatever ghosts awaited at this wedding, I would face them with my family beside me, the family I had found after I thought everything was lost. 15 years ago I was a different man, or rather, a boy pretending to be a man. Engineering textbooks piled high on my dormitory desk, chewed pencils scattered across notes filled with calculations and diagrams. I was quiet, methodical, and painfully shy. The son of factory workers who had scraped together every penny to put me through university. I first saw Olivia in the library on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. She stood at the reference desk, her voice carrying across the usually hushed space. "I need statistics for this article I'm writing on campus socioeconomic diversity," she was saying to the librarian, who looked overwhelmed by her energy. But I can't make sense of the math. It's all Greek to me. I don't know what possessed me in that moment. Perhaps it was the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, or how her voice held such confidence despite admitting a weakness. Before I could overthink it, I was standing beside her. I could help you with the statistics, I offered, my voice cracking slightly. I'm studying engineering. She turned, and I felt the full force of her attention, like standing in a spotlight. Her eyes, a startling blue-green, assessed me in one swift glance. My knight in shining armor, she said with a smile that transformed her face. I'm Olivia Hayes. Journalism major and mathematically challenged. Maxim Korolev, I replied, already falling. We found a table in the back corner. I explained sampling methods and confidence intervals while trying not to stare at her slender fingers taking notes, or how she bit her lower lip when concentrating. So this means my conclusion is statistically significant? She asked, pointing to a calculation I'd done. Exactly. You can safely say that first-generation students are underrepresented by a significant margin. She beamed at me. You're a lifesaver, Maxim. Most guys I know would have just offered to do it for me, not teach me how to understand it. What good would that do? I asked, genuinely confused. You just need help again next time. Something in her expression shifted then, a curious softening. You're different, she said finally. Buy you coffee as thanks? One coffee became dinner. Dinner became study sessions. Study sessions became walks across campus, shoulders brushing, conversations stretching into the night. I learned she came from money, old money. Her father was a retired judge, her mother a society figure who organized charity events. Their expectations for Olivia were as polished as the silver they used at dinner parties. They want me to be exceptional, she told me one night as we lay on the grass looking at stars. Not just successful, exceptional. You already are, I said. She kissed me then, fierce and sudden, and my carefully ordered world exploded into color. Our relationship moved with the same intensity that characterized everything about Olivia. Where I analyzed and considered, she leapt and pulled me along with her. I was intoxicated by her world, the ease with which she moved through life, the way doors seemed to open before she even knocked. Together we balanced each other. I gave her structure, she gave me spontaneity. The first time she brought me home to meet her parents, I spent hours ironing my only good shirt. Mrs. Hayes greeted me with a smile that never reached her eyes. Mr. Hayes questioned me about my prospects, while examining my calloused hands, hands that betrayed my working-class origins. Olivia tells us you're quite the mathematician, Mrs. Hayes said over dinner, cutting her meat with surgical precision. I'm an engineering student, I corrected gently. But yes, I enjoy mathematics. How practical, she replied, making it sound like a disease. Later Olivia laughed it off. Don't mind Mother. She's just protective. Of you or your family status? I asked, immediately regretting my sharpness. But Olivia just kissed me. Both. But I choose you, Maxim. Every time. After graduation, everything seemed to happen at once. Olivia received an offer from a prestigious magazine in the capital, her dream job. I secured a modest position at an engineering firm. We were making plans to live in separate cities temporarily when she surprised everyone, especially me. I'm turning down the position, she announced one evening. I've been offered a job at the local paper. And, she dropped to one knee in my tiny apartment, I think we should get married. Her parents were horrified. My parents were cautiously happy but concerned about the speed. Only Olivia seemed certain, blazing ahead with wedding plans, dismissing all doubts. The ceremony was elegant yet modest, a compromise between her world and mine. As we danced at our reception, I couldn't believe my fortune. This brilliant, beautiful woman had chosen me. Mrs. Hayes caught me alone near the bar. Her fingers gripped my arm with surprising strength. She sacrificed her career for you, she said, voice low and precise. She could have been someone important. Don't let her down. I smiled politely, but her words planted a seed of guilt that would grow roots over the years, strangling our happiness from below while we remained unaware of the danger. I'll make her happy, I promised. Mrs. Hayes' smile was thin. See that you do. What I didn't understand then was that happiness wasn't something I could give Olivia. It was something she would have to find for herself. The first 2 years of our marriage were a honeymoon of sorts. We lived in a small apartment downtown, nothing like the sprawling house Olivia had grown up in. The living room doubled as our dining room, and the kitchen was barely large enough for one person to cook. But it was ours. I worked at a warehouse while applying for engineering positions, and Olivia secured a job at the local newspaper. Her articles were always buried in the back pages, nothing like the front page features she dreamed of writing, but she never complained. At least not to me. "This is just temporary," she'd say, kissing me before heading to bed. "We're building something together." I believed her. We were young, in love, and the future stretched endlessly before us. Then came the decision to start a family. "I want a baby," Olivia announced one evening, curled beside me on our second-hand sofa. "I know it's not perfect timing, but when is it ever?" "I'm ready." I was surprised but delighted. The thought of a child, a physical manifestation of our love, filled me with unexpected longing. The first few months were exciting. Olivia tracked her cycle meticulously, and our lovemaking took on a purposeful edge that was somehow both less and more intimate than before. 6 months passed. Nothing. "It's fine," Olivia insisted, though her smile had tightened. "These things take time." By the 9th month, the disappointment had started to wear on her. I'd come home to find her staring blankly at her computer screen, her work forgotten. "Let's see a doctor," I suggested gently. "Just to make sure everything's okay." The appointments began. Blood tests, ultrasounds, more invasive examinations. Each one chipping away at Olivia's composure, at our bank account, at the easy intimacy we once shared. "Unexplained infertility," the doctor finally pronounced, as if giving a name to our failure made it easier to bear. "There's nothing obviously wrong with either of you, but conception isn't happening." Olivia was silent on the drive home, her face turned toward the window. "We could adopt," I offered that night. "There are so many children who need homes." She whirled on me, eyes flashing. "I want 'em. Why children, Maxim? My babies. Is that so hard to understand?" It wasn't, but her vehemence startled me. "I just thought." "You just thought what?" "That I'd be happy raising someone else's unwanted child? That I wouldn't care about having my own flesh and blood." Her words stung, but I recognized the pain behind them. "That's not what I meant." "Your family never had trouble breeding," she said, the word crude in her elegant mouth. "My mother reminds me every Sunday call that the Hayes line has never struggled to produce heirs." The word heirs hung between us, a reminder of the world she'd come from, the expectations she'd been raised with. As months became a year, Olivia's disappointment calcified into something harder. She began staying late at work, avoiding the apartment and the constant reminder of what we couldn't create. One night, while searching for an important bill in Olivia's desk drawer, I found a folded medical report she hadn't shared with me. It detailed a condition that significantly reduced her chances of conception. My heart sank as I realized she'd hidden this from me. When she came home, I confronted her with the paper in hand. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Her face drained of color before flushing with anger. "You're going through my things now? Invading my privacy?" "This isn't about privacy, Olivia. This is about us facing this together." She snatched the paper from my hand. "The doctor is wrong. These tests aren't conclusive. But if they are, we could look at specific treatments or—" "There's nothing wrong with me," she shouted, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Do you understand? There can't be." I reached for her, but she backed away. "Livy, please." "Don't call me that," she whispered. "Not now." The weeks that followed were a cold war in our small apartment. We moved around each other like ghosts, speaking only when necessary. I slept on the couch most nights, telling myself it was temporary, that we'd find our way back to each other. Then came the Wednesday I'll never forget. I returned from work early, a surprise dinner plan in mind to break the stalemate between us. Olivia stood in our bedroom, 2 suitcases open on the bed. "What's happening?" I asked, though I already knew. She didn't turn around, continuing to fold clothes with precise movements. "I'm leaving." Just like that? No discussion. She finally faced me, and I was struck by how composed she looked, as if she'd made peace with this decision long ago. "I met someone. Richard. He's a businessman, successful. He can give me the life I deserve." The words hit me like physical blows. "The life you deserve? What about our vows? What about everything we've built?" She laughed, a hollow sound. "Built? What have we built, Maxim? A mediocre apartment? A failing marriage? A childless home?" I stood speechless as she zipped her suitcases. At the door, she delivered her final blow. "You're not a real man if you can't give me a family." Then she was gone, leaving me alone with the echo of her words and the wreckage of what I'd thought was love. After Olivia left, I shattered. There's no prettier way to describe it. The apartment that had once felt cozy now seemed to mock me with its emptiness. I quit my warehouse job, couldn't bear the pitying looks from coworkers who had attended our wedding. My engineering applications gathered dust in a folder I couldn't bring myself to open. Days blurred together. I survived on delivery food and whatever I could microwave. Sleep came in fits and starts, interrupted by dreams of Olivia's final words replaying like a broken record. "You're not a real man if you can't give me a family." 3 months into this shadow existence, someone pounded on my door with enough force to rattle the hinges. "Open up, Max. I know you're in there." Lucas, my university roommate and the closest thing I had to a brother. I hadn't answered his calls in weeks. I shuffled to the door, wincing at my reflection in the hallway mirror, hollow-eyed, bearded, a ghost of myself. When I opened the door, Lucas recoiled slightly before recovering his composure. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, pushing past me. He surveyed the apartment, taking in the unwashed dishes and discarded takeout containers. "This ends today." He marched to the windows and threw them open, letting in a rush of spring air that seemed offensively fresh against the staleness inside. "I'm fine," I protested weakly. "Just need more time." Lucas turned, his expression a mixture of concern and determination. "It's been 3 months, Max. You've had time. Now you need purpose." He produced a business card from his wallet and slapped it onto the coffee table. "My construction company is expanding. We need someone with engineering knowledge to oversee the technical aspects of projects." I stared at the card. "I never finished my degree. You completed everything but the final semester. You know enough." He squared his shoulders. "Be at this address Monday morning, 9 sharp. Shower first." "Lucas? She's not coming back, Max? And from what I hear, you're better off." His voice softened. "Don't let her take anything more from you." Something in his words penetrated the fog I'd been living in. Not hope exactly, but a dim awareness that there might be a path forward. Monday morning, I stood outside Lucas's office building, clean-shaven and wearing the only suit I owned. My hands trembled slightly, from anxiety or the 3 cups of coffee I'd needed to propel myself out the door. I wasn't sure. The job wasn't glamorous. I started as a site inspector, checking that projects met specifications and safety requirements. But it engaged my mind in a way nothing had since Olivia left. Gradually, I began suggesting improvements to designs, streamlining processes. Lucas promoted me to project manager within 6 months. Work became my salvation. I moved to a different apartment, one without memories of Olivia in every corner. I started running in the mornings, the physical exertion burning away the lingering bitterness that clung to me. Then came the company's annual holiday party. Lucas cornered me by the punch bowl. "Don't look now, but the music teacher for the employees' kids program keeps glancing over at you." I looked immediately, of course. She stood across the room, a slim woman with chestnut hair loosely gathered at her neck. When our eyes met, she didn't look away but offered a small smile instead. "Her name is Sophia," Lucas supplied. "Recently moved here. Single, according to Karen from HR." "I'm not interested," I said automatically. Lucas sighed. "It's been almost 2 years, Max. Just talk to her." Later, as children performed a holiday recital, I found myself seated beside her. "They're quite good," I whispered as a young boy played a slightly off-key rendition of Jingle Bells on the piano. "They've worked very hard," she replied, her voice warm and slightly accented. "That's Emil. 6 weeks ago he couldn't find middle C. You must be a miracle worker." She laughed softly. "No miracles. Just patience and practice." She extended her hand. "Sophia Navarro. Maxim Korolev." Her handshake was firm, her skin slightly calloused from what I would later learn were years of playing stringed instruments. Unlike the whirlwind that was Olivia, my relationship with Sophia developed slowly, deliberately. Coffee after the children's lessons. A concert she invited me to where her former students performed. A quiet dinner where I learned she had moved from Spain 3 years earlier to pursue a teaching opportunity. She was nothing like Olivia, thoughtful where Olivia had been impulsive, calm where Olivia had been volatile. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, her words carried weight. 6 months into our relationship, we walked along the river after dinner. The night was cool, stars visible despite the city lights. "I need to tell you something," I said, the words I'd been rehearsing for weeks finally finding voice. "About my past." Sophia turned to me, her face open and attentive. "I'm listening." I told her everything, the marriage, the infertility, Olivia's abandonment. I waited for judgment or pity to cross her face. Instead she took my hand. "Thank you for trusting me with this, Maxim." Her eyes held mine steadily. "But you know your ex-wife doesn't define who you are." Something locked inside me shifted, a door long shut creaking open. "You're a good man who experienced a painful loss," she continued. "That's all." In that moment, standing beside the flowing river with this woman who saw me clearly, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not healed completely, that would take more time, but finally moving in the right direction. 1 year after meeting Sophia, I proposed to her on the riverbank where she had helped me begin to heal. No elaborate plans or hidden photographers. Just the two of us, the water flowing past, and a simple question asked from my heart. "Yes," she said, laughing through tears. "Of course yes." Our wedding was held in her parents' garden. Flowers in bloom, fairy lights strung through trees, and music played by Sophia's former students. Everything Olivia's wedding wasn't. Intimate, genuine, unpretentious. No family fortunes or social expectations weighing us down, just two people promising to build a life together. We settled into a comfortable routine. Sophia continued teaching music at the school and giving private lessons. I advanced at Lucas's company, finally putting my engineering knowledge to good use. Weekends were spent fixing up our small house, exploring the city, or simply enjoying quiet moments together. Then came the morning I found Sophia in the bathroom, her face pale but her eyes bright with a mixture of shock and wonder. "Maxim," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm pregnant." The pregnancy test lay on the counter, its 2 pink lines unmistakable. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. A storm of emotions flooded through me, joy, disbelief, and underneath it all, a creeping fear. I'd been down this road before. I knew the heartbreak waiting at the end. "Are you sure?" I finally managed, my voice strange to my own ears. Sophia nodded, studying my face. "I've taken 3 tests. All positive." She reached for my hand. "Say something, Maxim." "How is this possible?" The words escaped before I could stop them. "The doctors said." "Said what?" "With Olivia, we tried for over a year. Test specialists. They said there was unexplained infertility." Understanding dawned in Sophia's eyes. "You never thought you could have children?" I shook my head, shame washing over me for my reaction to what should have been joyous news. "I'm sorry. I'm just surprised." She squeezed my hand. "It's okay to be scared. I am too." That night, I lay awake long after Sophia had fallen asleep, my hand resting lightly on her still flat stomach. Was it possible? Could this fragile hope be real? The first doctor's appointment did little to ease my anxiety. I sat rigid in the waiting room, surrounded by expectant couples exuding a confidence I couldn't feel. When we were called in, I held Sophia's hand so tightly she had to gently extract her fingers. "First pregnancy?" the doctor asked cheerfully as she prepared for the ultrasound. "Yes," Sophia answered. "But my husband has some concerns based on his previous experience." I explained about my first marriage, the infertility diagnosis, the years of trying without success. The doctor listened attentively, nodding occasionally. "Let's have a look, shall we?" The room filled with a rapid whooshing sound, a heartbeat strong and fast. On the screen, a tiny form pulsed with life. "There's your baby," the doctor said, smiling. "Perfectly healthy from what I can see." Relief weakened my knees and I sank back into my chair. Sophia's eyes shone with tears as she stared at the screen. "But how?" I asked. "If I couldn't before." The doctor turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You mentioned unexplained infertility, which is a frustrating diagnosis because it means we don't know why conception isn't occurring. In some cases, it can be immunological incompatibility between partners." "Immunological incompatibility?" "Yes. Sometimes a woman's immune system can recognize her partner's sperm as foreign invaders and attack them. Or there can be incompatibility at the cellular level that prevents successful implantation." "So it wasn't me? Or her? But us together?" The doctor nodded. "It's one possibility. Medicine doesn't have all the answers yet, especially in reproductive health." On the drive home, a weight I'd carried for years, the belief that I was somehow incomplete, inadequate, began to lift. I wasn't broken. Neither was Olivia. We just hadn't been right for each other, right down to our biology. The months that followed were a blur of preparations and anticipation. We converted our spare room into a nursery, painted the walls a soft green. Sophia's stomach grew, and with it, my confidence that this was really happening. I attended every appointment, held Sophia's hand through the discomforts, talked to the growing bump each night before sleep. When Sophia suggested names, I surprised her. "What about Adrian?" I asked. "It means dark one in Latin, but it also has connotations of the Adriatic Sea, water, life, flowing." "Adrian," she repeated, testing it. I like it. It feels right. The day Adrian entered the world was the most terrifying and beautiful of my life. 16 hours of labor, Sophia's strength astonishing me as she brought our son into the world with a final, determined push. When the nurse placed him in my arms, I studied his tiny features with wonder. My dark hair, Sophia's delicate nose, and eyes that seemed to hold wisdom beyond his minutes of life. "Hello, Adrian," I whispered, my voice breaking. "We've been waiting for you for such a long time." Looking up at Sophia, exhausted but radiant, I felt a completeness I'd never known possible. This was my family, not the one I'd imagined in my youth, but infinitely more precious for having been found after loss. That night, watching Sophia and Adrian sleep, I silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought me here, to this perfect moment that once seemed impossible. "Excuse me, is this the only brand of wood sealant you carry?" I turned from the shelf of construction supplies, the familiar voice sending a jolt through me before I even saw his face. David Chin. He'd been part of our university circle, closer to Olivia than to me but always friendly enough. His expression transformed from casual inquiry to shock as he recognized me. Maxim Korolev. We stood awkwardly in the middle of the hardware store aisle, surrounded by paint cans and power tools. It had been, 7 years since I'd last seen him? Since Olivia left. "David," I managed, extending my hand. "This is unexpected." He recovered quickly, grasping my hand firmly. "It's been forever. You look good, man. Healthy." There was something in his assessment, a hint of surprise, that suggested he'd expected otherwise. I wondered what Olivia had told people after she left. "Thanks. Just picking up supplies for a bathroom renovation," I said, gesturing to my cart. "You?" "Building shelves for my daughter's room." He smiled, pulling out his phone. "Twin girls, 3 years old. Complete chaos at home." He showed me photos of identical little girls with his dimples and his wife's red hair. I found myself genuinely smiling. "They're beautiful. Congratulations." An awkward pause followed, heavy with unasked questions. "So," he finally ventured, "how have you been? I heard you remarried." So he knew something of my life. I wasn't surprised. Our old social circle had likely kept tabs on both Olivia and me through the years. "Yes, to Sophia. She's a music teacher." I pulled out my own phone, showing him a recent photo of Sophia and Adrian at his 7th birthday party. "This is our son, Adrian." David's eyes widened as he looked at the photo, then back at me. "Your son?" The surprise in his voice was unmistakable. I knew what he was thinking. Everyone had known about our fertility struggles. "Yes, he's 12 now. Quite the violinist." Pride colored my voice. "He just won his first youth competition last month." David stared at the photo longer than necessary, clearly processing this information. That's wonderful, Max, really great." Another pause, this one charged differently. "How about you?" I asked. "Besides the twins and home improvement projects." "Same firm still. Made partner last year." He hesitated, then added, "I still see some of the old crowd occasionally. Mark's getting married next month, actually." "I know. We got the invitation." "You're going?" His surprise was evident. "We're considering it. Adrian might perform something as a gift." David shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "Olivia will be there. With her husband." "I've heard," I said, keeping my tone neutral. He studied me for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. "Look, I don't know if I should say anything, but you seem like you're doing well. You've moved on." "I have," I confirmed. "It was a long time ago." He nodded. "Olivia married Richard Garland. The hotel guy." I gathered as much. "They have a son, Caleb. About a year younger than your boy, I think." He paused. "She's different now." Max became a society columnist, always in the middle of charity galas and benefits. Very concerned with status, connections. She's always posting about Caleb's achievements, piano recitals, math competitions, his private school. I absorbed this information, surprised by my lack of emotional response. There was a time when details of Olivia's life would have cut like glass. "She got what she wanted then," I said simply. David looked uncertain. "I guess. But between us, people talk. Richard doesn't seem particularly happy. There's a lot of pressure on him, on the kid." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. "It's just..." He stopped, then continued more carefully. "She changed after she left you. Became colder somehow. It's all about money and prestige now." An announcement over the store speakers broke the moment, reminding shoppers of a weekend sale. "I should get going," David said. But it was good seeing you, Max, really good. You seem at peace. As we parted ways, I realized he was right. For the first time, I'd heard about Olivia's life without that familiar twist of pain. The woman he described, obsessed with status, pushing her husband and child, was someone I barely recognized. Someone I didn't miss. Driving home, I found myself thinking not about Olivia but about her son, Gil. A boy close to Adrian's age, born to a mother determined to shape him into a testament of success. I wondered if he felt the weight of her expectations the way she once had felt her parents. When I arrived home, the house was filled with the sound of Adrian practicing his violin. I stood in the doorway of our living room, watching his concentrated expression as he worked through a difficult passage, backing up to repeat it until he got it right. Sophia noticed me first, smiling from her seat on the couch where she had been listening. She raised an eyebrow in silent question. "Everything okay?" I nodded, overwhelmed suddenly by gratitude for this life that had seemed impossible after Olivia left. My son absorbed in his music. My wife, patient and supportive without pushing. Our home, modest but filled with genuine joy. "Dad." Adrian noticed me and lowered his violin. "What do you think of this section?" "I'm trying to get the emotion right, not just the notes." As he demonstrated the passage again, his face intense with feeling, I realized I had received something precious that Olivia, for all her wealth and status, might never have: a family built on love rather than expectations. "It's perfect," I told him, meaning far more than just the music. A month before Mark's wedding, our kitchen table disappeared under a sea of sheet music. Adrian had been selected as one of 10 finalists in the International Youth String Competition, a prestigious event that attracted talented young musicians from across the country. "What do you think, Dad?" Adrian asked, holding up 2 pieces of music. "Bach's Chaconne or Paganini's Caprice No. 24? I examined the sheets, though my musical knowledge extended only as far as appreciation, not expertise. "Both look impossibly difficult to me." Sophia joined us, setting down a cup of tea. "The Bach has more emotional depth, but the Paganini would showcase your technical skills." "Bach," Adrian decided after a moment. "I want to play something that makes people feel something, not just show off." Sophia squeezed his shoulder approvingly. Later, when Adrian had gone to bed, she showed me the competition program she'd received via email. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a name on the list of finalists. "Caleb Garland. Performing lists, La Campanella, arranged for piano." My stomach tightened. "Garland? You don't think Olivia's son?" Sophia nodded. "The age matches what your friend said." The coincidence seemed too precise to be accidental. "So Adrian will be competing against Olivia's son." "It appears so." Sophia watched me carefully. "Are you okay with that?" I considered the question honestly. "Yes, actually. Adrian's worked hard for this. It doesn't matter who else is competing." Sophia smiled. "That's exactly right." The evening before the competition, Adrian paced our living room, his violin case clutched in his hands. "What if I mess up?" he asked, his voice tight with anxiety. "What if I forget a section or hit a wrong note?" I sat him down on the couch between Sophia and me. "Then you'll keep playing just like you do in practice when you make a mistake." "But this is different," he insisted. "Everyone will be watching. The judges will be scoring every note." "Do you know why I love hearing you play?" I asked. He shook his head. "It's not because you hit every note perfectly. It's because when you play, I can feel what the music means to you." I placed my hand over his heart. "That's what makes music special. Not technical perfection but the emotion behind it." "Your father's right," Sophia added. "The judges have heard technically perfect performances before. What they remember is the performance that moves them." Adrian took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "I'm still nervous." "That's okay," I assured him. "Being nervous means you care. Just use that energy in your playing." The competition hall was grand, all polished wood and velvet seats. We arrived early, finding our places in the family section. I scanned the audience, a reflex I couldn't suppress, looking for Olivia. "There," Sophia murmured, subtly indicating with her program. I followed her gaze to see Olivia seated near the front with a distinguished man in an expensive suit. Richard, presumably. Between them sat a boy around 11 years old, straight-backed and solemn. Even from a distance, I could see Olivia leaning close to him, speaking intently. The boy nodded mechanically, his expression tense. "She looks the same," I said quietly to Sophia. "Not quite," Sophia replied thoughtfully. "She's more polished now. Like a finished product." The competition began. Young musicians came and went, each remarkable in their own way. When Caleb Garland was announced, the boy from Olivia's row stood and walked to the grand piano with practiced poise. His performance was technically flawless, fingers flying over the keys with precision, every note crisp and clear. Yet there was something mechanical in his playing, as if he were following instructions rather than interpreting the music himself. When he finished, the audience applauded enthusiastically. Olivia beamed, her smile triumphant as she exchanged satisfied glances with other parents. 3 performers later, Adrian was called. My heart raced as he walked onto the stage, violin in hand. He seemed so small under the bright lights, but his stance was confident as he positioned his instrument and nodded to the judges. From the first note of Bach's Chaconne, I knew something special was happening. Adrian didn't just play the piece, he lived it. His body swayed slightly with the emotional peaks and valleys of the music, his expression completely absorbed. This wasn't a performance, it was a conversation between him and Bach across the centuries. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence before the applause erupted. I caught sight of Olivia's face, a flash of something like alarm crossing her features before she composed herself. During the award ceremony, Sophia gripped my hand tightly. The third-place winner was announced, then second, Caleb Garland. A polite smile fixed on his face as he accepted his medal, but his eyes sought his mother. Olivia's expression was tight, her applause perfunctory. First place, the head judge announced, for an extraordinary interpretation that displayed both technical mastery and profound emotional understanding, Adrian Korolev. The audience burst into applause as Adrian, looking stunned, made his way back to the stage. As he accepted his award, he looked out to us with wide eyes, his face breaking into an incredulous smile. I'd like to thank my parents, he said into the microphone, his voice steady despite his obvious emotion, for always supporting me and teaching me that music comes from the heart, not just the hands. I saw Olivia rise abruptly, striding toward the exit. Richard remained seated, his hand on Caleb's shoulder, leaning down to say something to the boy who sat rigidly, staring at his second-place medal. On the drive home, Adrian clutched his trophy, excitement bubbling over as he recounted every moment. Did you see their faces when I hit that sustained note in the middle section? I really felt it, Dad, just like you said. I caught Sophia's eye in the rearview mirror, sharing a silent moment of pure joy. Whatever confrontation might await at Mark's wedding, for now, this victory belonged to Adrian, earned through his passion, untainted by the ghosts of my past. The morning of Mark's wedding arrived with perfect blue skies and a knot of tension in my stomach. I stood before the mirror, adjusting my tie for the third time, rehearsing scenarios in my head. Would Olivia approach me? Would she ignore me completely? Which would be worse? Sophia appeared behind me, stunning in a deep blue dress that complemented her olive skin. You look handsome, she said, straightening my already straight tie. And nervous. Is it that obvious? Only to me. She turned me to face her. Remember, we're going to celebrate Mark's wedding. Everything else is secondary. Adrian bounded into our room, violin case in one hand, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder. At 12, he was growing like a weed, his pants already an inch too short since we'd bought them 3 months ago. I've been practicing the piece for the ceremony, he announced. It's going to be perfect. Mark had been thrilled when we'd offered Adrian's musical talents as our wedding gift. A live violin during the vows? Fantastic. Much better than another toaster. The wedding venue was a renovated historic inn surrounded by gardens in full summer bloom. We arrived early so Adrian could coordinate with the wedding planner. As he disappeared with his violin, I scanned the arriving guests with apprehension. She's not here yet, Sophia said, reading my thoughts. Let's find our seats. The ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. Mark and his bride, Elena, had written their own vows, heartfelt promises that made even the most stoic guests dab at their eyes. When the moment came for the ring exchange, Adrian stepped forward and began to play a delicate melody that floated over the gathering like a benediction. I found myself watching not just my son, whose talent still amazed me, but the faces of the guests moved by his music. And there, in the 5th row, I saw her. Olivia. 13 years had changed her less than I might have expected. Her blonde hair was shorter, styled in an elegant bob that framed her face. Designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, expensive jewelry at her throat and wrists. Beside her sat Richard, distinguished and polished, and Caleb, looking uncomfortable in his formal attire. As Adrian played the final notes, Olivia's gaze shifted from him to me. Our eyes locked across the rows of guests, and for a moment, I was transported back, To our own wedding, to the fights about children, to her final devastating words as she walked out the door. I expected to feel something profound: anger, hurt, regret. Instead, I felt a curious detachment, as if looking at a photograph of someone I used to know. At the reception, we managed to avoid direct contact for the first hour. I kept busy congratulating Mark, introducing Sophia to old friends, watching Adrian receive compliments from impressed guests. But eventually, the inevitable moment arrived. I was alone at the bar, waiting for drinks, when I felt her presence before I heard her voice. 13 years and you haven't changed much, Max? Her voice was the same, that distinctive blend of honey and steel that had once captivated me. I turned to face her. Up close, I could see the fine lines around her eyes that her expensive makeup couldn't quite conceal. Hello, Olivia. She sipped her wine, appraising me over the rim of her glass. So you did come. I wasn't sure you would. Mark's a good friend. I wouldn't miss his wedding. And you brought. Her eyes drifted meaningfully to where Sophia was chatting with Elena's mother. My wife, yes. Sophia. Olivia's smile didn't reach her eyes. Teacher, I hear. How quaint. The condescension in her tone might once have wounded me. Now it only revealed her own insecurities. She's extraordinary, I said simply. Olivia launched into what felt like a rehearsed monologue. Richard's hotel chain just acquired 3 new properties in Europe. We're renovating the penthouse in our main residence, 14,000 square feet, overlooking the river. Caleb's private school costs more than most people's mortgages, but it's worth every penny for the connections he's making. He's already been invited to study piano at a prestigious summer program in Vienna. She paused, clearly expecting me to be impressed, or perhaps diminished by the evidence of her success. And you? I hear you work in construction now? With Sophia, the schoolteacher? Before I could respond, Adrian's voice called out from across the room. Dad, can I have another cupcake? Olivia froze, her eyes widening as she processed the word. Dad. She turned to follow my gaze to where Adrian stood by the dessert table. You have a son? I nodded, unable to suppress a small smile at her obvious shock. That's Adrian. He won the international string competition last month. The color drained from her face as recognition dawned. The violin competition. That was your son? The one who took first place, yes. She set her wine glass down with a sharp click. That's impossible. The doctors said. They said we had unexplained infertility, I finished for her. It turns out the problem wasn't with me or with you specifically. According to our doctor, we were just biologically incompatible. Olivia stepped back as if I'd physically pushed her, disbelief and something darker, envy perhaps, flashing across her features. You're lying, she whispered. Why would I lie? Adrian is my son, mine and Sophia's. Biology sometimes works in ways we don't expect. She stared at Adrian again, taking in his features. The dark hair he'd inherited from me, the way he gestured with his hands as he spoke to another young guest. He looks like you, she said finally, her voice hollow. For the first time since our reunion, I saw a glimpse of the Olivia I had once loved, vulnerable, unguarded. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the polished facade she'd perfected. Well, she said, her voice artificially bright, isn't life full of surprises? Before Olivia could recover her composure, Richard appeared at her side, one hand protectively on Caleb's shoulder. The boy looked even more uncomfortable up close, his eyes darting nervously between the adults. There you are, Richard said to Olivia, his tone pleasant but with an undercurrent of tension. He turned to me with a scrutinizing gaze. You must be Maxim. I extended my hand. And you're Richard. Nice to finally meet you. His handshake was firm, professional, the grip of a man accustomed to business dealings. Likewise. I've heard quite a bit about you over the years. Something in his tone suggested what he'd heard hadn't been entirely accurate. I wondered what version of our story Olivia had shared with him. Caleb, meanwhile, was staring at Adrian, who had approached with a plate of cupcakes. You're the violinist from the competition, Caleb said suddenly, recognition dawning on his face. The one who played Bach. Adrian nodded, surprised at being recognized. And you played Liszt on the piano. It was really good. Olivia cut in sharply. Caleb, don't be modest. Your performance was superior. The judges simply made a poor decision. Richard shot her a warning look. Olivia, please. Caleb's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I thought your Bach was amazing, he said to Adrian, ignoring his mother. I've never heard anyone interpret it that way. It was like you were telling a story. Thanks, Adrian replied, genuinely pleased. Your technique was incredible. I could never play piano like that, all those notes at once. I watched this exchange with fascination. Despite their parents' complicated history, the boys seemed to connect instantly through their shared love of music. Olivia wasn't having it. Caleb, there's no need to flatter. Your performance was objectively better. The technical difficulty alone. That's enough, Richard interrupted, his voice firm but quiet. The look he gave Olivia spoke volumes about private disagreements. Sophia chose that moment to join us, sliding her arm through mine with natural ease. Hello, she said warmly, extending her hand first to Richard. I'm Sophia. It's lovely to meet you all. Her genuine smile and lack of pretension seemed to catch both Richard and Olivia off guard. Richard recovered first, shaking her hand with what appeared to be relief at the interruption. Richard Garland. This is our son Caleb. Sophia bent slightly to address Caleb directly. I heard you play at the competition. You have extraordinary talent. Caleb's posture relaxed slightly. Thank you, ma'am. Sophia, please, she insisted. I teach music, so I know how much work goes into performances like yours. You teach music? Caleb asked, suddenly interested. Piano and violin primarily, but I work with all string instruments. Olivia stepped forward, inserting herself between Sophia and Caleb. Caleb studies with Maestro Belikov. Perhaps you've heard of him? He only accepts the most gifted students. Sophia nodded pleasantly. His reputation is well-deserved. You must be very proud of Caleb's accomplishments. Her response, free of competition or defensiveness, seemed to throw Olivia off balance. An awkward silence followed, broken when Adrian offered Caleb a cupcake. Want one? The chocolate ones are the best. As the boys drifted a few steps away, engaged in their own conversation about music, Olivia turned back to me. How is this possible? She demanded in a lowered voice, gesturing toward Adrian. How can you have a child when the doctor said? I explained already, I replied calmly. Immunological incompatibility. It happens sometimes. Richard looked between us with dawning comprehension. Immunological incompatibility? You mean the fertility issues weren't? He didn't finish his sentence, but his implication was clear. Olivia had told him a different story. Olivia laughed nervously. This is ridiculous. If there had been a medical issue with our compatibility, the doctors would have told us. Perhaps they did, I suggested quietly. There were test results you didn't share with me. Richard's gaze sharpened. What test results? Olivia's face paled. He's making this up. I never hid anything. Sophia gently intervened, her voice soft but clear. Medical science doesn't have all the answers even now. What matters is that all of us were eventually blessed with children. Her diplomatic response offered Olivia an exit from the corner she'd backed herself into, but Richard wasn't ready to let it go. You always said the problem was entirely with him, he said to Olivia, his voice low. That's why you left. Why you said he couldn't give you a family. That's what the doctors told me, Olivia insisted, though her voice had lost its certainty. Clearly they were wrong, Richard replied, looking meaningfully at Adrian. I felt a sudden surge of pity for Richard. He had the look of a man who was beginning to question much more than just this one story. It was a long time ago, I said, offering him the same grace Sophia had extended to Olivia. We've all moved forward. The tension between Richard and Olivia was palpable now, an invisible current that made even strangers nearby shift uncomfortably. The boys, sensing the adult drama, had gone quiet, watching us with concern. Adrian broke the silence, addressing Caleb. I brought my violin. Would you like to play something together? There's a piano in the reception hall. Caleb looked to his father, pointedly not to his mother. Can I? Richard nodded. Of course. As the boys hurried off, Sophia touched my arm. Let's go watch them, she suggested, giving Richard a compassionate smile that acknowledged the difficult position he found himself in. We left Olivia and Richard locked in silent confrontation, following the sound of tentative piano notes as Caleb began to play and Adrian lifted his violin to join him. The improvised duet between Adrian and Caleb drew a small crowd of appreciative wedding guests. Despite having never played together before, the boys found a surprising harmony, Adrian's violin soaring above Caleb's thoughtful piano accompaniment. It was beautiful to witness, this unexpected collaboration born from such a complicated history. Sophia stood beside me, her hand in mine. They're wonderful together, she whispered. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. There was something powerful in watching my son create beauty with Olivia's son, a redemption of sorts that I never could have imagined. When they finished playing, the gathered guests burst into applause. Caleb looked genuinely happy, perhaps for the first time that day. Adrian beamed, his natural enthusiasm infectious. They bowed together like seasoned performers. They should exchange contact information, Sophia suggested. They could develop this partnership. I agreed, though I wondered how Olivia would feel about her son maintaining a connection to us. As the reception continued, I lost sight of Olivia and Richard. The newlyweds cut their cake, speeches were given, and dancing began. I was helping Adrian pack away his violin when I felt a presence behind me. "I need to speak with you," Olivia said quietly. "Alone?" I glanced at Sophia, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "I'll take Adrian to get some cake," she said, leading our son away with a reassuring squeeze of my arm. Olivia and I stepped outside onto the terrace overlooking the gardens. The evening air was warm, scented with roses and freshly cut grass. For a moment, we stood in silence, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. "I thought you'd be angrier seeing me again," she finally said. "I was angry for a long time," I admitted. "But not anymore." She studied my face as if looking for evidence of deception. "I expected to feel triumph, showing you how well I've done without you. Instead I feel—" She trailed off, seemingly unable to name the emotion. "Hollow," I suggested. Her eyes flashed briefly before her shoulders slumped in unexpected surrender. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice dropping to nearly a whisper. "Something I should have said 13 years ago." I waited, knowing instinctively that whatever she was about to share had cost her dearly to admit. "I lied to you," she continued, the words coming with difficulty. "The doctor did tell me the fertility issues might have been on my side. But I couldn't accept that. Not when my mother had drilled into me since childhood that Hayes women were perfect, that continuing the family line was my duty." She turned away, looking out over the garden. "Everyone expected me to be flawless, perfect career, perfect marriage, perfect children. I couldn't bear the thought that the failure might be mine. So I blamed you instead." I absorbed her confession in silence, surprised by how little it affected me now. The validation might once have meant everything, but that wound had already healed, scarred over by time and the love I'd found with Sophia. "I'm not telling you this to ask forgiveness," Olivia added quickly. "I'm not sorry we divorced. We weren't right for each other. But I am sorry for how I did it, for the lies, for those final words I said to hurt you." I saw genuine regret in her eyes, along with exhaustion. She looked like someone who had been running a race for years, never allowed to rest or acknowledge fatigue. "I forgave you a long time ago, Olivia," I said honestly. "It hurt then, more than I thought I could bear. But it led me to where I am now, to Sophia and Adrian." She nodded, her gaze drifting to where Adrian and Caleb could be seen through the windows, still talking animatedly by the dessert table. "Your son has a good heart," she said softly. "I see kindness in his eyes. Like you always had." Coming from Olivia, this was perhaps the highest compliment she could offer. "Caleb seems like a talented boy," I replied. "He plays with real precision." A shadow crossed her face. "He works very hard. Perhaps too hard sometimes." There was a question in her statement, an uncertainty I'd never heard from her before. For a brief moment, I saw that she was struggling with parenthood just as much as any of us, despite her wealth and status. We stood in companionable silence for a moment before Richard appeared in the doorway, Caleb at his side. "We should be going," he said, his voice carefully neutral. The tension I'd witnessed earlier between him and Olivia remained, but it had shifted somehow, less hostile, more contemplative. Caleb stepped forward, holding out a card to Adrian, who had followed close behind. "My email and phone. Maybe we could play together again sometime?" Adrian took the card eagerly. "Definitely. I was thinking we could try that Mozart piece we were talking about." The boys exchanged hopeful smiles while we adults watched with varying degrees of surprise and uncertainty. As they prepared to leave, Olivia paused beside me. "Life has a strange way of working out, doesn't it? All those years trying to have a child with you. And now our sons might become friends," I finished. "There's a certain poetry in that," she acknowledged with a small, genuine smile, perhaps the first real one I'd seen from her all day. Later, driving home with my family, Sophia asked, "How are you feeling after all that?" Adrian had fallen asleep in the back seat, his violin case clutched protectively even in slumber. "Like I've finally closed a book that was left open too long," I replied, reaching for her hand. "That night at home, I found an old photo album I'd kept hidden away for years. Memories of my time with Olivia that I'd been unable to discard but too pained to display. I placed it on an open shelf in our living room. Why now? Sophia asked, noticing the change. Because now it's just part of my history, I answered, not a wound I need to hide. I stood at our front door watching the first light of dawn color the sky. For the first time in 13 years, I felt completely free of the past that had haunted me, ready to embrace whatever the future might bring.